How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Talk4 Podcast. So excited to have you here today and show you this fantastic episode. Just want to say quickly that episodes like this one and all the ones before and the ones in future are made possible by people who subscribe. Hopefully, just like you. I'm going to ask you today if you can leave a subscribe, leave a follow, leave a rating, leave a like or a comment, and just support the show in the little ways that you can like that. It makes a huge difference on my end. And quickly, just want to plug as well. I've taken 30 of the best episodes of this podcast and turned them into a fantastic book that goes into 150 secrets to greatness. Each one of those 30 episodes gets crunched down into 5 of the best key takeaways from the whole talk and turns them into a fantastic book. Highly recommend you check it out. Please support the show by grabbing a copy, either a paperback or an ebook. And I can't wait to show you guys this one today. So guys, without further ado, let's get over to the episode. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 151 of Talk4, the Quickfire podcast, where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people. Today is certainly no exception. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me. Let me introduce our just absolutely incredible guest for today, General Tom Bussiere, who's going to be answering our questions today. So, General Bussiere, how are you doing today? Welcome to the show. I'm thrilled and honored that you'd spend the time here today. I know you have a very busy schedule, so I'm glad we can make this happen, and I'm just stoked. So yeah, how you doing today?
Wonderful, Louis. Thanks for inviting me and allowing me to have this chat with you today.
It's going to be really great, and cannot wait to dig into these questions I've got here. There's a whole load of good stuff to get into. But first of all, just to introduce you to the people who don't know who you are, we always do the kind of 30 to 60 second elevator pitch as a show tradition. So you got a minute, 2 minutes or so, just a little bit of an intro into the life of you, which, I mean, me being me, seeing all this incredible stuff that you've got up to over the years and everything you're doing now, I think this is going to be a hilarious minute, to be honest. So, yeah, please do tell us a little bit about what you get up to on a day-to-day basis and who you are, really.
All right, Louis. I obviously General Tom Bussiere, the commander of Air Force Global Strike Command. Air Force Global Strike Command has the privilege of being stewards in the United States Air Force and the United States of America of 2/3 of our nuclear triad. So we are responsible for the air leg and the land leg. So we have the bombers and the intercontinental ballistic missiles, the ICBMs. And interesting factoid for the listeners that we're the only force in the free world that has bombers and ICBMs. So that capability and capacity that we provide not only for the U.S., we also provide that capability and capacity for our allies and partners.
Right. And you're the commander. So if you could quickly as well, just what's kind of the job description for you in that sense too? So what kind of falls on your shoulders and what's your day-to-day like and all of that?
So the responsibilities for Air Force Global Strike Command commander really is twofold. On one side of the responsibilities is really make sure that our airmen have the proper training, have the proper equipment, and have the proper resources to do the job that we're asking them to do, either in long-range global strike in our bomber force or in our intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM force. So that's the traditional, resourcing, training, and equipping of our force. The other side of the commander, the other side of the hat, is the operational side. So day in and day out, we provide forces trained, ready, and equipped to the commander of STRATCOM for the first U.S. Strategic Command to perform their global strategic deterrence mission. So there's more of an Air Force hat and an operational joint hat that goes to both the Secretary of the Air Force and the commander of STRATCOM. It's a interesting and busy time, both in our bomber and ICBM legs.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying all of that, sir. So let's get into, I think, where all of this began then. So we always like to go towards the backstory and just see how incredible careers are shaped essentially on this podcast too. That's one of the first things we like to get into. So your career in the Air Force has spanned several high-level leadership roles, culminating in the current position now as the commander of Air Force Global Strike Command, as you mentioned. So I was hoping you could walk us through your journey from your early days in the Air Force to reaching such significant leadership roles then. So what were some of those really defining moments, experiences that shaped your career, any mentors along the way, and just kind of walk us through a bit of that career path if you can, please?
Yeah, so 2025 is the 40th anniversary of me starting this journey. So to think back now and go 40 years, that it actually went by in a flash. So
Time
I
flies when you're
originally
having
came
fun.
into the Air Force to fly. That was my, primary objective is to fly jets, have fun, and do something meaningful, and really just stay 20 years and go do something else. That changed after about 4 or 5 years in the Air Force, and I'll tell you, I'm not necessarily unique in that journey. So I wanted to fly. I came in, I went to pilot training, and then I stayed at pilot training for what we call as a first assignment instructor pilot. Did that for a total of, between pilot training and being an instructor, stayed there for 4.5 years at my first installation. And that's a defining moment in of itself because of the unique aspects of teaching in that technical area. Um, had the opportunity after that to go to F-15Cs and do air-to-air fighters for a little over 6 years. Again, opportunity. Um, Quite frankly, it's not wasn't my first choice, but it was what my commander at the time said. No, you're going to go fly F-15s. I had been fascinated at the time in pilot training with the A-10 because of its mission. But my commander at the time said, no, you're going to go to F-15Cs. Did that. And then another opportunity came up, and that was the B-2 stealth bomber, where they had asked me to go fly the B-2 several times over a 2 year period. And I had gone back and forth with the chain of command at the time. And when the time was right, which was I got selected in 1995 and went in early 1996 to the B2 program. Again, phenomenal opportunity. Spent many years in the B2 program. And the opportunities really for me was in the B2 stealth bomber. That opened up doors of opportunity and experience that I don't think I would have had if I would have stayed in the fighter career field for my entire Air Force life. And after that, after the initial 4 assignments in the B2 program, then really you're transitioning into the chain of command, right? You're going to be a squadron commander, group commander, wing commander, numbered Air Force commander. I did my school and my staff. And then again, another unique opportunity after that was to be the commander of the mighty 8th Air Force. Very defining command. And quite frankly, in my opinion, the reason we have an independent Air Force in the US is because of what the mighty 8th Air Force did in the European theater in World War II. Again, after 8th Air Force, another opportunity where I was sent to Alaska to be the Alaskan Command Commander, 11th Air Force Commander, and the Alaska NORAD Region Commander, and had the opportunity to fly the F-22. I failed to mention I flew the B-1 when I was at 8th Air Force, when I was the 8th Air Force Commander. And then, of course, went to U.S. Strategic Command as the Deputy Commander, and then the Air Force asked me to come down here to Global Strike Command. 40 years of a journey. And if you would have asked me 40 years ago what I'm going to be doing in 2025, I would have had no idea. I really have 3 criteria for continued service, and it's been that way since I was a mid-level captain. The first criteria or question I ask myself is, am I having fun? Day in and day out, is the mission and the life and the service I'm doing, is it fun? My philosophy is, if you're not having fun, life's too short. You need to go find something else to do. The second question on every assignment is whether or not I think I can make a difference. If I don't think I can make a difference in the job or the service or the duty the Air Force is asking me to perform, I won't do it. Again, life is too short. I'll go find something that's more productive. And then the third question I have to ask myself is, will my wife, Barbara, let me serve? So we've been together for 44 years. I'm not going to mortgage my family for service. There are times in our nation's history when that's a requirement. I let my airmen know they'll be the first to know when I need them to mortgage their family for their service. But those are my 3 criteria. And underpinning all of that, and I don't think it's unique to the Air Force. I think it's really unique to the service in the military is there are windows and doors of opportunity. You can, quite frankly, do anything you want in the Department of the Air Force, Department of Defense. The only thing that bounds you is your own imagination.
Agree, 100%. Thank you for clarifying. Absolutely. I mean, incredible career. And I just want to say a massive congrats on those 40 years and the effect that you've had on, really the world and the US military is phenomenal. And the reason I think why I've gravitated so much towards fighter pilots in general, obviously many of which have then gone into roles of command within different wings and stuff in the Air Force and the Navy and the military in general is because the level of professionalism within these people I've found is second to none. And I haven't seen them really anywhere else to that level and degree elsewhere a lot of the time. So the people in the Thunderbirds and the Blues and people like this, that level of high performance professionalism I've found as being just incredible. And I've only ever seen them really in some of the highest level athletes and performance teams in the world. So I've got to ask them. So you had time in fighters, you had time in bombers. I'd love to know how those experiences and different experiences really shaped your perspective on how important it is of what you're doing today, Air Force Global Strike Command. So you had time hands-on. How do you feel like that's kind of shaped a bit of the leadership philosophy you have going into this role, and also some of the needs and things that you wanted to implement going into it as well from your own perspective?
Yeah, I would say it's pivotal and foundational to who I am. And I would say it's not just fighter or bombers. It's really my experience across the fabric of that 40 years. So trainers, fighters, and bombers, and there are unique cultures in each one of those sub communities in the flying aviation career fields in the Department of the Air Force. Each one of those cultures have very unique attributes that have informed the way I think, the way I lead, the way I perform. And I would offer to you they're complementary, right? So what I learned as a first assignment instructor pilot on 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 teaching, on flying, on discipline, on foundational elements of how you take care of airmen led into my experience in F-15s. And in that culture, again, to your point, it's a very, very unique, discipline focused culture because of um, exactly to your point, those different communities. It's their mission, right? And sometimes the personalities and the mission drive the culture, and sometimes the people and the culture drive the mission, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a hand in glove, but very unique and slightly different culture in the fighter community. And then when I came to the bomber community, um, it is it's different because of the mission. It's different because of the crew makeup, right? But a four ship or eight ship of fighters, quite frankly, is no different than a two ship or three ship of bombers. You have the same number of crew members, different responsibilities. But whether you're a small team of a two ship or a four ship of fighters, or you're a two ship or three ship of bombers, you still have to work together. The underlying elements that transcend trainers, fighters, or bombers are, quite frankly, our ICBM professionals here in Global Strike Command. The foundational elements of discipline and the way you approach your day-to-day duties, and the professionalism. That's kind of the common theme across, my experience in the Air Force, and it's foundational to Air Force Global Strike Command. How we operate bombers, how we operate our helicopters, how we operate our intercontinental ballistic missiles, how we do operations with the world's and the nation's most powerful weapons is very disciplined. It's very deliberate. And so all of my experiences kind of over the last 40 years have informed the way I approach the command's mission, the way I try to teach and mentor our young squadron commanders, group commanders, and wing commanders. And you'll see examples in history, whether it's in Global Strike Command and the Department of the Air Force, other major commands or in other services across our allies and partners, you will see the difference in peacetime and in war of disciplined formations or undisciplined formations. There's many examples of both. But for us in Air Force Global Strike Command, there's only one way we can do business.
Definitely. I mean, I'd love to get into exactly what that looks like then. So, an incredible place in the world, an incredible job with incredible responsibility. So, it plays obviously a crucial role in the nation's defense strategy, particularly regarding strategic nuclear capabilities. So, if we look at some of the stuff that you mentioned earlier as well, when you go into these roles, you want to assess if you can have a good impact on the place and the mission there. So, how do you balance the demands for maintaining deterrence readiness with the necessity of modernization and innovation within the command? And just from your perspective, too, going into it, what were some of those things that you were looking to implement there? And what did you believe your influence was going to look like going into this job when you took it?
So quite frankly, I didn't know. I had been out of the command for, let me think here, 8 years, no, 6 years. So I had been out of the command since 26, no, 18 to 22. So just over 4 years, I was out of the command. So after a 4 year kind of doing my other two joint jobs, for me, and what it doesn't really matter what command level it is, for me, it takes a while to get my arms around how the organization is operating when I get into it as a new commander. Sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's 6 months to really get my arms around the organization's operation, culture, what its needs are. In this case, to your opening thoughts and comments, the pace of Global Strike Command is unrelenting. So it took me 6 months in this job to really get my senses and my arms around the totality of all the aspects. And that's not only because we have a 24/7 real world mission every day, right? So our mission is every day, like it has been, since October 27th, 1962, when the first ICBM was put on alert. We've had ICBMs on alert. So there is no vacation or off time from strategic deterrence, right? So that foundational underpinning of mission has been steady for decades. On our bomber legs, whether they are exercising to perform and validate their nuclear mission, or they're being tasked to go do bomber task force missions, that mission is never ending. The demand signals for long range strike bombers across the fabric of the globe is never ending, because our allies and partners love exercising and integrating and training with our bombers. Our allies and partners love the message it sends when our bombers are traveling around the globe, either east or west. And the regional combatant commands demand signals are never ending. So that would be enough, Louis. If that's all we had to do, quite frankly, that would occupy every hour of every day. But we also have to make sure we recapitalize, when we modernize the 2/3 of the triad, and that those programs are on track, and that we have a coherent pathway to integrate our new capabilities. So B-1 and B-2 to B-21, our UH-1 November helicopter to our MH-139 helicopter, our Minuteman III to our Sentinel weapon system, our NAOC to SAOC, so our National Airborne Operations Center, E4B, to our new Survivable Airborne Operations Center. Those programs are ongoing. So the staffs at Air Force Global Strike Command's energy and attention into those programs is just as high as our day-to-day operational forces readiness and preparedness to either perform the strategic deterrence mission or do our bomber task force missions.
Yeah.
So that is a massive undertaking that our quite frankly, very small command does in every day. So when I came into command, I kind of got that stock of that from a training perspective or from a modernization perspective. Two elements came to mind for me. One of them was reinforcing across the fabric of the command without any hesitation the foundational discipline required to operate in this business, right? Reinforcing to our airmen two things: the importance of what they do for our nation and our allies and partners, and reinforcing the manner in which we operate when you perform the strategic nuclear deterrence mission. And then the other element is wrapping it all together to make sure they have the resources, the equipment, and the leadership required to perform that mission. Those are kind of the big rocks that I focused on in the first year and a half in the command.
Right. So when you mention nuclear deterrence and advanced capabilities, such as some of these aircraft and these things that we work with, such as the B-21 and the ICBMs, by the way, I have a very unique opportunity at Edwards Air Force Base this July, and I'm incredibly excited to see some of these amazing aircraft, hopefully, and just get a picture of what the gravity really is of these incredible machines. But I can't help but think, listening to the conversation there, just about how high priority your responsibilities essentially are to the US and, quite frankly, the free world's defense. So I'd love to just kind of dig into a little bit about, you mentioned quite a small command there. I've spoke to people in very large commands. I've spoke to people in small commands too. And I've noticed that their leadership profile and the way they choose and things they prioritize in terms of leadership and high performance environments, whether that's morale or whether that's something completely different from that too. I'd just love to get a picture of kind of how you approach leadership in a role of such high responsibility in a small command. Then, so how does that look for you? How do you choose to lead?
So I'm a very firm believer in what I characterize as the chain of command. Right. So for the U.S. military, the chain of command is codified in Title 10, U.S. Code Title 10, which codifies the authorities inherent in the chain of command. So for the chain of command in Air Force Global Strike Command, it is the squadron commander, the group commander, the wing commander, the numbered Air Force commander, to the MAJCOM commander, to the secretary and the chief of the service. That's the service line of chain of command. I also have an operational chain of command for the operational side of the mission space, which is same squadron, group, wing, numbered Air Force, me, to strategic command. So I have kind of two operational chain of commands. One's through the service line, and one's through the joint, or what I say is the purple lines, to U.S. Strategic Command. Equally important in the chain of command, the trinity of the chain of command is responsibility, authority, and accountability. So reinforcing our commanders in the field, all the way down to the squadron level, that we give them very unique, distinctive, and privileged command responsibilities. It's a privilege. No one in the Air Force, or quite frankly, the Department of Defense, is entitled to command. It's a privilege to lead our airmen, our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines, and our guardians in the world's and the nation's most important mission areas. So responsibility is a privilege. The authority is really important to make sure we give our commanders at every level the appropriate authority to perform the responsible mission areas that we are giving them. And then the third, which is never a doubt, is when you are a commander, you will be held accountable for the mission success or forbid the mission failure of that command. So that's what I've tried to reinforce in Global Strike Command is day in and day out, our mission is very, very distinct, very unique. And I expect our commanders at every level to use their authorities inherent in their command positions to take care of the mission, to take care of our airmen, and to take care of our airmen's families. So that's kind of the foundational way I've tried to instill that. And we do, not unlike other commands in the Air Force, we do courses for different levels of command, and I put a lot of energy into that because I feel if I can't invest in the future of the chain of command and global strike command, that it won't transmit the proper message, and our commanders are important to make sure we get it right.
Right. So, I mean, it's a fantastic statement, but I'd love to dig into a little bit more about just how that actually looks on kind of the actionable scale too. And I ask that because I think there's a lot to be taken away from that too within the business realm and families and things like this within that kind of a situation. So I'd love to just kind of see a bit more about how that's done. So how do you enforce that? How are you portraying that to these people? How do you make sure they're all on the same page? What are some of those things that you do to ensure that kind of gets the message across to these people to create this kind of a culture where they are all on the same page there and obviously appreciate what they're doing, how you want them to as well?
No, again, really, really important question, Louis, is how do you instill that concept, that mentality, that culture, not only in the chain of command, but across the fabric of every command. Um, and there are many examples in history. There's many examples in business. There's many examples with allies and partners where leadership did not create the environment for a healthy, effective climate and culture where our airmen are not empowered to do the mission we're asking them to do in this case. So what I've again tried to do is make sure that every level of command, squadron, group, deputy wing commander, I actually bring them here to Barksdale, Louisiana, and I spend either a week or several days, depending on the level of command, personally with the commanders and their enlisted leaders, and inculcate expectations, uh, give them a deep understanding of our mission space, because about half of the commands, both leaders and airmen, do not necessarily have deep experience in the nuke enterprise. And so we build them that experience both by a historical review, a standards review, a process review within how we do certifications in our business. And then we give them the tools and the authority to go out and lead their formations. Um, Again, you build culture over time in organizations by putting the right people with the right leadership skills in the right positions to do that. And it's not overnight. It's not like a light switch. It's really building a healthy, effective climate in any organization, but in this case in the military, requires to engage leadership at every level that are all have a common mental model and a common focus and a common goal. And again, it's not unique to Global Strike Command, but it's the risk of failure is too high in our business not to be laser focused on that.
Absolutely. So talking about that then, so some of the risks and of that not being in place, I'd love to get a picture of some of the future now then. So given the rapidly evolving nature of global security threats, I mean, I feel like I see something new every day when I go on the news at this point right now. But from cyber warfare to geopolitical tensions, I've spoken to some great people from all walks of the US Air Force recently. Lance Power, one of the guys from cyber. Incredible talks with various people from different aspects of looking at where the future might be heading and stuff too. And I'd love to see what your take is really on just where you foresee the role of Air Force Global Strike Command evolving in the future to meet these evolving needs as well. So, particularly in relation to technology advancements and just global instability in general, how do you see the future shaping for the command?
So, in some respects, Louis, the world environment, as you look across the fabric of the globe and you look at the potential threats or the actual threats that transcend various different nations that the U.S. is concerned about. If you step back from that, and it's pretty complicated, it's pretty complex, it's pretty dangerous world. In fact, I say routinely that it's the most dangerous environment that I've witnessed in the 40 years since I've been in the military. So if you take that for granted, uh, Air Force Global Strike Command's mission is not going to change, right? So, the demand signal will go up. There will probably be a higher demand signal for bombers, and but the foundational mission of providing strategic deterrence and a combat capable and credible nuclear deterrence force, I would say the importance of it will go up over time. If not, it's not uh, evident now. Um, but if we step back from all those nuances and we recognize that we're going to transition from our legacy force to our modernized, recapitalized force, um, the foundational needs for what we provide the nation and the world are not going to change. I think the importance will be realized, but our job is to have a credible, trained, ready force day in and day out that's available. The unique aspect that some of your listeners may not appreciate is we have to be ready every day. So a lot of other forces in the military that have a cycle of readiness and a cycle of training and a cycle of availability to do their primary mission. We do have those cycles in Global Strike Command, but we also have a day in and day out foundational requirement to provide capability to U.S. Stratcom every day. So it's a ballet and a balance to be able to do that. I don't think that's going to change. The demand signal is not going to change. The force posture may change. The numbers may change, but the foundational importance of what we do, I don't think is going to change in the negative. I only think senior leaders across the globe are going to realize that that stabilizing force that's been around for many, many decades is only more important. The only thing I'll add to that is as we transition from legacy to new, I say analog to digital, we'll be able to take advantage of the speed of technology in our new weapon systems probably more quickly than we would have been or are able to do in our legacy systems, just based on the nature of the way they're designed and built. And as different aspects of technology come available, I think we'll be able to insert them into our new weapon systems more quickly and more agilely than we can today, just based on technology. Um, again, I think the last thing I'll say to this question, unless you have a follow up, is um, we have never faced, from a nuclear deterrence realm, the number of threats that we're seeing today across the globe. So, a fundamental concept of deterrence is primarily uh, against two actors, right? So we have many, many decades of deterrence theory when it comes to a bipolar world, when it comes to two primary nuclear powers. So if you look at the worlds we see it today or potentially in the future, it's the concepts and the theories of deterrence will have to mature and be discussed across the fabric of policymakers, think tanks, academic institutions to kind of tease out how we are going to deter not one, but two, or potentially more than two potential adversaries, and make sure that they understand the foundational value of what we can do if threatened.
Well, all I can think really on the back end of that there really is just that as a person, you being the commander of Global Strike Command, there's a whole lot of responsibility that falls on your shoulders, but now more than ever, right? Like you said, a 40-year career in the Air Force, and now these things are starting to ramp up. On a personal level, how do you kind of manage that? I suppose, what does it feel like to you when you see these threats cropping up now and you can probably feel the level of responsibility growing on your shoulders to get this right and ensure that you are the tip of the spear essentially of defense for this? From a personal standpoint, what does that feel like to you, and how do you manage that level of growing responsibility? Does it get incredibly tough for you, or is it something that you're just so mission driven with this that you can only see the way to success with it?
Yeah, I think it's a byproduct of the DNA of most military members and senior officers in the department is yeah, we're all laser focused on the mission. You know, the more senior or older you get in the department, your ability to influence the system and the bureaucracy grows. And my foundational fundamental responsibility is to make sure that when and if the call comes, that our airmen are ready and resourced to do the job we're asking them to do. And my philosophy hasn't really changed a lot when it comes to command. Fundamentally, my first command as a squadron commander, whether it's squadron, group, wing, numbered Air Force, two numbered Air Force opportunities, deputy commander, STRATCOM, or here, foundationally, whether the call comes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning, when the call comes, every commander wants to be able to go, we're ready and we're on our way. The worst thing that could happen when someone's called is to go, we're not ready. I'll call you back in a couple weeks. Right. So that's the foundational thing that drives, I think, most commanders, if not all commanders in the military, and definitely within Air Force Global Strike Command, is because we know the importance and prominence of the mission and the fact that we have to be available every day of every week. It kind of drives your mindset, right? So you're always driving to make sure our airmen are resourced, they have the proper authorities, they have the proper equipment, and it's a full-time job. It's not like a part-time job, and it's probably busy enough just working with a legacy fleet. But as you work from legacy to new in our command, we have to make sure that not only do our airmen have the current resources in the current fleet to do the mission we're asking them to do, but we're actually building and acquiring the tools in the future that will make their job more effective, more efficient, and more lethal.
This is one of those questions where I'd like to ask it, and you're free to skirt over it if it's a bit too deep to ask into this. But if you did, because you were speaking about it, if you did get that call at Global Strike Command, that call that I imagine you dread, but you are always preparing for, what happens then? So what exactly does Global Strike Command do when that comes through? Is it more about kind of activating, preparing, and getting the bombers going, or what exactly would that look like in theory if that were to happen? Are you able to share that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give you a kind of a synopsis of 2024. So in 2024, Air Force Global Strike Command performed 33 Bomber Task Force missions. 10 of them were for the European theater, 10 of them for the Indo-Pacific theater, 6 of them in the Central Command AOR, and then between Northcom, Southcom, and AFRICOM were the remainder of the 33. Those were primarily presence and engagements missions. So it's not only an opportunity for our airmen to train on our global mission in the Bomber Force. Like I previously mentioned up front, it's an opportunity for us to train with our allies and partners, to exercise with our allies and partners, to integrate with their weapon systems in their countries and in their airspace. That's never ending, right? So that is more scheduled and more predictable, although not necessarily always 100% predictable. Last year, of those 33, several of those were short notice because regional combatant commanders created a demand signal to have the bombers in their area responsibility. In addition to those 33, we also activated what we call the Immediate Response Force. IRF is the acronym, Immediate Response Force, 5 times last year, which are no notice activations of our bombers to go perform various different missions. Of those 5 different IRF activations last year, three of them, all 3 bombers, B-1, B-2, and B-52, were tasked no notice to perform combat. So again, wing commanders, group commanders, squadron commanders, day in and day out, know that they're ready and what they need to be ready if they're not ready, because we don't get to decide when the call is going to come, but we do get to decide whether our force and our formation is going to be ready when the call comes. And again, routinely happens. Now on the ICBM leg, they're always ready, right? So we have to be ready within a moment's notice to be, if directed, we have to be ready. And that's the underpinning of strategic deterrence, right? Capable, credible force that you have the ability to communicate and control on a moment's notice, and that's the underpinning of our deterrence force. And that force, like I had mentioned briefly, has been on alert since October 27th, 1962.
Right. So, as we're on the topic of the future, and I feel like this has a nice tie-in, but it's clear that we have shared passion. If you look at my background here, I'm looking at yours. You know, we have obviously aviation is something that we're both incredibly passionate about, and something I can never get enough of, frankly. And I mentioned obviously I'm heading to Edwards soon, and I'd love to do a bit of a tie-in maybe that kind of relates a little bit to maybe test and development too, as I've had a number of very good conversations surrounding that recently. But with regards to aviation, the bombers, test and development, I'm wondering what kind of stuff you're really excited about, or things that you think are really important within that aspect of things too, to stay on top of the food chain essentially in deterrence and keeping things sharp. So anything within that world of things for the people listening in today, and also for me as a big fan of all this, that you think are going to be critical to the future of aviation and deterrence?
Yeah, I'll give you a little. I mean, they tie in our business. They tie in very nicely together. So, in no particular order, I'll kind of give you a rundown. So, our helicopter force, we are flying the UH-1 November. It's a Vietnam era Huey, and we are in the process of replacing that platform with a basically it's a commercial variant 139 that we're turning into a military variant. The designation is the MH-139. It's been nicknamed or named the Gray Wolf helicopter. We're actually fielding that as we speak today across the fabric of the command. That new helicopter, provides both missile field security and convoy security for our ICBM wings. And it's although it's a commercial to a military variant, it will provide the range, the speed, the payload, the endurance, and the survivability required of our security forces team that provides that level of security for our ICBM wings. Again, we're pretty excited about the Gray Wolf being fielded. The On the air side, again, I think your listeners, if they're aviation enthusiasts, will know that last month we celebrated the 73rd anniversary of the first flight of the B-52A model. Yes, I said 73rd. And granted, it was the A model. We're on the H model now, but still a long time ago. And so the B-52, which is a very iconic, well-recognized platform in the world, will get new motors, new radar, some new avionics, and we'll redesignate it the B-52J model. And that platform will fly for another 3+ decades, and just a workhorse of long-range strike. Um, and that platform will be around providing standoff and strategic deterrence for a while. And then we're really excited about the B-21 Raider. So again, I'm a little bit biased, but it's the most exquisite, most technologically advanced airplane ever built, and that will replace the B-1 and the B-2 bomber in the command. That program's going well. We have aircraft out at Edwards performing developmental tests right now. And we're really excited about fielding that capability for the nation and for the world in the near future. The next platform that we're bringing on board is the Sentinel weapon system. That was in the news a lot last year because of a law. It's called the Nunn-McCurdy law, that there was a program threshold breach where the department had to go through some process for the U.S. Congress to make sure that the program was still a valid national security need, which the Department of Defense reported back to the U.S. Congress last July and validated that weapon system is required for national security. The current Minuteman III weapon system is 55 years old this year. So that weapon system's been in the field for 55 years, standing alert, which is a pretty astounding statistic. Again, it's a testament to our airmen that maintain and operate and defend that weapon system, that it's been such a viable and credible force for so long. The Sentinel weapon system is ongoing. Again, it's been in the news a lot. Um, really excited about providing that capability and capacity to the free world in the U.S. Department of Defense here in the out years.
Yeah.
And then a less known, understood weapon system is our 747 wide body that provides various different capabilities for the Department of Defense. Um, you'll see it in the news occasionally moving the Secretary of Defense around the globe, but it's a command and control platform for the nation, for the department, and we are replacing that platform with a 747 8I. That program's acronym is the SAOC, Survival Airborne Operations Center, and that weapon system is currently ongoing to be fielded. Also, we're developing new weapons, new cruise missiles, upgraded gravity weapons, and we're trying to modernize the fabric of all three legs of the nuclear triad, but in our case, the air leg and the land leg. Again, I describe it as going from analog to digital, but really um, a holistic modernization, recapitalization program for the nation. And I'll emphasize for the nation because it's a national mission. We have the privilege of performing it in the Department of the Air Force and Air Force Global Strike Command on behalf of the nation.
There we go. So we're going to get into inspiring the youth and young airmen in a minute, because ultimately it all comes down to that. Everything from the pilots to the maintainers to the people behind the scenes you never see comes down to them. But before we jump into that, I wanted to ask one more thing too, to tie back to a little bit of the conversation I had with Cinco Hamilton from Eglin as well. So on the aspects of some of these new developments and stuff too, I thought it'd be just such a shame not to ask how you, from your leadership standpoint and command, also see maybe things like AI and autonomous systems impacting kind of military operations over the coming years, and especially in where you are, nuclear deterrence, global strike capabilities. Any insights into what you see kind of coming in the next decade, really, with all that too? I know obviously there's a lot of talk around it at the moment.
Yeah, there is. AI and quantum computing are always topics of discussion. Um, so in the nuclear deterrence mission and Air Force Global Strike Commission, there's a lot of opportunities for artificial intelligence. A lot of them have to do with intelligence, right? So the ability to decipher and call through large quantities of data uh, from the intelligence perspective, and distill that down to something more quickly and more agilely to inform senior decision makers is probably an area of opportunity for AI within our space. There's also probably an opportunity in our what we call as NC3, nuclear command and control and communications fabric of that, as we recapitalize and modernize the fabric of how we do nuclear command and control. There's probably opportunities for artificial intelligence to look at the various different uh, venues and pathways and make very agile, effective decisions on a clear path of communication, whether that's um, space based, aerial based, terrestrial based, or cyber, different areas of the cyber domain. There's great opportunities, I think, in technology growth in those areas. We probably won't see artificial intelligence be part of the human decision-making process in our business, just because of the nature of nuclear operations and nuclear deterrence. Um, but maybe someday. I mean, I think that's probably an area that most senior leaders will pause on because of the nature of our business. But there's great areas of expanding artificial intelligence in military operations that transcend those very distinct mission areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the insight. I really appreciate that. So, as mentioned, I'd love to give a bit of a head nod to all service members, but especially looking at your command, the airmen, it all comes down to these people. And now, as you'd mentioned, 40 years of service, and now you're seeing a pickup in things going on around the globe and threats. And now more than ever, it's really important for youngsters to get involved in the space, whatever that might be. So I'd love to get a bit of advice for them. So looking at how things are evolving, technologies, the world, threats generally, just people coming into the military. What do you think they should focus on to have successful careers? Because obviously, where you are, you've had an incredibly successful career. So what kind of qualities would you look to instill super early on? What would be some of the big skill sets to work on and develop? And how would you kind of identify where the most important areas really are for you to focus on, regardless of whichever path you tend to go down?
So I'll tell you what I tell every kind of forum I have the opportunity to talk to. So whether it's a young airman, young officer, or a squadron commander's course or a senior officer course, I kind of have a philosophy that I personally developed over the years and over the decades. So the not necessarily in particular order, but I I ask young airmen, young officers, anyone joining the military, I go, you know what the best job in the Air Force is? And I kind of pause to let them ponder on it as they try to think. I go, it's whatever job you're in. Whatever duty and job you are given in the Department of the Air Force is the most important job. And you need to act like it is, right? And I go, you know how you get the next important job, most important job in the Air Force? By doing the best job in whatever job you're in. Um, so our Air Force, our military is, even though some people may disagree with this statement, we don't have too many people for the mission. The demand signals by mission really exceed the capability and capacity of our airmen, and they're doing a phenomenal job. So if you're in the Air Force, if you're in the Department of Defense, your job is really important. And so, and if you do a really good job, doors and windows of opportunity are going to open. And if you can continue to replicate that philosophy, um, there's really no bounding to it. That's been my experience. Some people look in and go, well, that's not a good job. I don't like that. So I'm not really going to put my heart and soul into it. I'm not going to do a really fantastic job. That's not the way the world works. I don't think it works that way on the outside in the civilian business either. I mean, you want people to love their job and do a great job at the job they love. And the fundamental responsibility of supervisors and leaders at every level is to give their airmen, in our case, the reason to love their job, to understand the purpose and value of what they do, and then give them the resources to do it. Again, my experience is if you do that, not everyone subscribes to that theory, but if you build that environment, you'll have a healthy environment, you'll have a healthy command climate, and you'll have airmen that want to come into work every day to do the job that they're doing for the nation. And I'm not naive. It's not 100% that way everywhere. But you'll know the difference when you walk into an organization, what type of environment is set in there and whether the airmen are excited about the job they're doing or they're not. And if they're not, it's usually a byproduct of how the leaders have set the culture in that organization. That's kind of been my experience. The other thing I tell our airmen is you can do whatever you want in the Department of the Air Force. I believe it's probably true in the Department of Defense, but definitely in the Department of the Air Force. You have the opportunity to do whatever your heart desires. And how you get to that end goal or that end state is really just hard work, determination, and professional conduct.
Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, everything that you do is, it's pretty superhuman looking at the job that you have, the effects that you've had, and the way that you lead. And I got to ask, how do you find time for you as well in all of this? You mentioned that you have a family who are critical to you. How do you manage that work-life balance? I mean, especially in a job that's got such high impact stuff. Yeah, and all of that all these big things
Yeah,
versus
I laugh
the
when
very
we
real problems of being a dad and stuff. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I,
Talk to me about
I chuckled at the question because I
that.
get it a lot, and I kind of sarcastically answer, I don't have work-life balance, you know. And that's not really, that's tongue in cheek a little bit, but um, I've been very lucky to have several things. Very, very lucky to have a family that supports my service. You know, my wife and my kids have been very supportive of my military service. And like I said earlier, when Barb says we're done, we're done. I mean, that's one of my criteria, and she's been very gracious with her support for 40 plus years to my career in my service, which is, again, I think a blessing for my family. My kids have been very supportive of my service. They're all adults now, but they served also. And that's a little unknown kind of aspect of military service is your spouse and your family serve too, because they're on the journey, they're on the ride. And they are just as affected by the military service as the military member themselves. Um, and the other thing I've had and been very lucky with is bosses and commanders and supervisors that have given me opportunities. You know, I would say I've had very little impact on my 40-year career other than been given the opportunity by people that I had the privilege of serving with. And again, that's a byproduct of culture and leadership in the environment that I was lucky enough to have when I served with squadron commanders, group commanders, and wing commanders, numbered Air Force commanders, major command commanders, and senior leaders in the Air Force that gave me an opportunity to do something different. And I just did it. And I've had fun for 40 years. And I think, history will prove me right or wrong, but I think I've made a difference in the jobs that I've had the opportunity and privilege of performing service in. And I guess I'll let the historian determine whether it's transitory or lasting, but um, it's an opportunity. And as you know, very few people get the opportunity and the privilege to serve in the U.S. military. I mean, it's less than 1% of our population. So again, what I want our airmen to understand is their service is unique. Their ability to serve, and a lot of people don't come in the military go, I'm gonna have a unique service opportunity. They come in because they're legacy servers. They want a job, they want a technical skill, they want to see the world, they want a paycheck, they want to leave home. All of those reasons are valid and okay. But why our airmen join the military and why our airmen stay are going to be two different reasons. Everyone goes through the journey. They go through a journey of discovery in their own personal service and their own personal experience in the military, where they realize that, yeah, they get to see the world, they get to serve with amazing people, they get to do missions that are really important to the nation and the world, they get to do unique things. But when they realize, I call it getting hooked, when they realize that individually, as a member of the military service in the US, less than 1% of our nation, when they realize that that service can make a difference on their nation, in some cases on the world, and they realize their ability to influence our mission, our airmen and their families individually, daily. I call it getting hooked. Once you get hooked on that ability, people just want to continue to serve. And there's a lot of debate on various different things in the Department of Defense, but what shouldn't be debated is the value, purpose, and requirement for what our airmen, soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Guardians perform for our nation.
Definitely. Well, we have a few minutes left here, but I've got to ask the new show tradition question that I've asked to a few people, and I get some great answers on this one. I've got to ask you then. So, if you had that big rewind and you could then go back in time and speak to a young you, 12, 13 years old, No idea where you were at that point, if you had your head screwed on right, or if you even knew what you wanted to do. But if you had a minute to speak to a young you, what would be your advice to you going forward, knowing everything that's happened from that 40 years of service and everything before then and what's going to come to?
I don't know, quite frankly, Louis, I don't know if I'd change anything. I wish I could go back and know what I know now and do it all over again, because I think I'd have a little bit more fun than I've had. Um, but if I look back on the 40 years since I was commissioned, and I look at all my assignments and all the weapon systems I had the opportunity to be part of, or the different assignments or command opportunities or service in combat. Um, every assignment has a different kind of input into the way I think, operate, and try to command Air Force Global Strike Command. And I would say they're complementary in nature and not exclusive. Um, I don't know if, I guess the only thing I would do different is continue I would probably thank my bosses and my commanders and my friends more than I probably did. Thank them for giving me opportunities, thank them for supporting my service, my family while I was gone or deployed. Probably that, I guess that would probably be the only thing I would revisit, is just to thank people more along the way.
That's a nice one. Okay, sir. So the final show tradition is always going to have to be the shameless plug. So that's been the questions for today. We always have that minute where we can just promote anything that we want people to take a look at, or just things that we believe in. So whether that's recruitment, learning more about Global Strike Command, anything personal from you, or any resources that you think people should take a look at, whether that's a book that changed your mindset or something, just anything you want to promote, now's a great time to do it.
So I guess the only thing I would ask the listeners to do is maybe do a little bit of research or discussion or dialogue on the purpose, the value, importance, and urgency of recapitalizing, at least from a U.S. perspective, our nuclear triad. Um, uh, a lot of folks are uncomfortable having that discussion. They just don't want to. And I think it would be beneficial for folks to at least have an informed discussion and understand the purpose of why we have this construct, this mission, and the service and value it provides, not only to the United States of America, but to our allies and partners. We provide this capability and capacity to our closest allies and partners, both formally through treaty and sometimes through informal agreements. And it's a silent kind of aspect of military service that very few people understand, and it's even less, I would offer, on the outside of the U.S. Department of Defense, where people have a deep-seated understanding of what we provide our nation and the world every day.
Got it. That's a great one. Thank you so much, General Bussiere. This has been an incredible episode of the Talk4 podcast, and it's been just an absolute pleasure having you on. And I just want to say, from myself and on behalf of the listeners, thank you for 40 incredibly great years of service and for everything that you do, and Barb allowing many more in the future as well. So I want you to know that I appreciate you and everything you do for the free world and the United States. So thank you so much. And just super, super honored by this podcast today. I've learned a whole lot, and yeah, just very, very proud right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Louis. Thanks for inviting me.
It's been great. And thank you guys for listening. This was episode 151. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at the channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones too, make sure to hit the subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. See you on the next one. Cheers.